my friends, and welcome back to Player Display for another entry within the Customizer's Journal. So here we have, once again, our ARM-modded Dr. Octavius, and what I think we're going to do today is I'm going to bite the bullet and try taking things a step further. So as I mentioned before, there have been some very, very precise people on YouTube who have tried articulating these claws, and as you can probably assume, it's no easy task, and that's because it's not. It's going to be very tricky, very meticulous, and it's going to take a lot of extensive planning, or at least it has. I think I know how I want to go about doing this. Let's first study up the claw that we already have. They're all exactly the same, except for, of course, on the different four tentacles, but ultimately they all plug right back onto the ball joint. And then what I'm hoping I can do is, of course, that joint, it's not going to be interfered with at all. And then what we'll do is on every single phalange, I suppose, we have an axle towards the base, and then we have an axle towards the fingertip. The fingertip. So what we want to do first, before we do paint, before we do actually any carving up of the piece, is we want to drill a little hole inside that axle right there. So we're going to need to bring out our old friend, the Dremel, again. I actually have some drill bits which would have fit just fine into that hole, but apparently I don't have one of those gold bits that's on the inside of the Dremel to hold it. So pretty much alternative I found is not quite a drill bit. It's meant more for, I guess, sanding or something like that, but this is pretty much my go-to when it comes to the really small and tiny drilling procedures. So you see how it spins just fine. It's lined up very well. And the reason why I can't use the drill bit that I could otherwise use is, again, that golden bit. So right here, when I take that cap off, you see there's a little golden piece right there. And effectively how this Dremel works, for those of you who are novices to the customizing industry, if you can call it that, you essentially have this golden bit, which is meant to secure a drill bit on the inside. Like you can see right here, there are these four little notches going around the rim. So basically when you put a drill bit in, and then you take the cap, you screw it back on, and when you do that, at least on mine, you need to hold down this button so it stays secure. Then once you have it screwed in, and then you spin it, that gold bit actually tightens underneath this silver cap. So that way, the drill is not going to fly all over the place, and it should hopefully stay nice and straight as we're going down into the piece. So here we have a claw. I think I'm going to do the entire process with a single finger to see how it goes. And I'm going to do it that way because if I screw it up, then absolutely worst case, I'll glue everything together if I hate the result. And then I'll just leave everything as is and just go straight to paint. And I'm still not too sure how I'm going to approach that. I said I might dull coat the arms, but then again, maybe I'll just go ahead and put Molotow chrome on the claws regardless. I'm still thinking about that. But again, before we do any paintwork at all, we need to do our carving and drilling. This is going to be a little tricky to film because it needs to sort of be down on the table here. I'm still working with that absolutely awful cardboard box with the phone on top, and then my sandwich clip right here holding up my phone by its kickstand. So I actually have a new tripod coming in the mail, so one day you'll never have to see this sucker ever again, which will be very good. But at least for now, I'm going to try to find a good orientation so we can see how the claw is modded down here on the surface of the table. So let me try and adjust that, and we'll try drilling a few holes. Yeah, so this is going to be a little bit awkward. As you can see, I have my handy-dandy Amazon box over here. I kind of have my camera kind of just hanging off of the box and then right on the edge of the table. So this is the weirdest camera orientation you'll ever see on this channel. Again, the next thing I film will probably be with that tripod. It's coming from Amazon, so it should be pretty quick. But what we're going to do here is now you've got a direct top-down view of this claw. I'm sorry, I have to kind of drill it towards the top of the screen. But basically what we're going to do, it's pretty simple. We're just going to drill right through that hole and then hopefully come out to the other side. I was considering maybe putting a piece of cardboard underneath so that way it wouldn't hit the table, but this is kind of my crafting table. It's already pretty beat up as is, as you've probably seen. So I think we're just going to go for it. You might want better lighting as you're doing this, but for me, I'm a little bit more reckless, so maybe don't follow my example verbatim if this is what you plan on doing. And of course, the claw mod is not required. If you like the claws as is and you don't mind them being very stable, then you could just stop right at part 1 in that first video where we got the tentacles in, they're already bendy, and from there you can go ahead and just do your paint if you wish. But in this case, I'm going to, again, take a risk, even though it's a little intimidating, and see how this goes. So I'm going to shut up, and we're going to try just drilling 1 or 2 holes, again, in one single finger to start, and then after that, we'll see if we can carve it up. So let's turn this guy on and see where we go. Okay, so yeah, we got a pretty good hole right there. Sorry, we were very off screen there. Again, I'm doing my best here, but at least so you can get an idea of the angle I'm going at and everything, but it pretty much came out to the other side of the axle right there. So what we're going to do is drill again through the other side, just that way we get rid of any excess plastic. So let's go ahead and do that. Yeah, nice and quick. We don't need to do it as long. And yeah, I damaged my table a little bit, so I might do some cardboard for the rest of the holes outside of this video. But one thing you might want to consider doing is, I'm not going to be that meticulous, but what you could do is drill halfway down the hole through this side, and then do it halfway through the hole on this side. So that way it guarantees, sorry, pointing at the wrong thing. So that way it guarantees a straighter shaft going through the center. But it's pretty small. I mean, you don't have to go that far of a distance. So I'm just going to do that, and we'll see where it goes. So now let's do it again for this one down here, and we'll see how it goes. So you want to keep it nice and flush with the table, keep it good and flat. You don't want it sliding anywhere. Get a good grip, and we're going to go ahead for that next hole. Goodbye, camera. And that one came out pretty centered too, as you can see right there. And again, I continue to damage my table. So let's go ahead and do it one more time through the top, or the other side rather. And what I've somehow neglected to mention is, when we cut these pieces out, how exactly are we going to pin these together? I am probably going to use a nice paper clip, and you probably want to get something that's a little thicker than the hole we actually have. So when we're doing our carving, if it's a little loose, then that will be made up for with a strong axle that's going to go down the center. So I'm not sure if we're going to go this big, or if we're going to use one of the smaller standard ones right here. And then what we're going to do is use our wire cutters to clip these up, kind of fit them in there, and then hopefully everything will be moving, and then after that we could do paint. So let me get my knife ready and get a better camera orientation, and let's see what we can do from here. Okay, so now we're set up, and I put my little toolkit box in the front here, so hopefully we get a little bit of better focus as we're having a look at this claw. So where do we go? Yeah, here's the one that we drilled up. So one important thing is, if you plan on articulating both joints, as I decided to do ultimately, is you probably want to best start with the top joint, because if you start by carving out this one, then you're not going to have as strong of a gripping foundation when it comes to carving out this top one. Then you're just going to be holding it here and carving it like that, so it'll be a little awkward. So just for convenience and to keep our fingy safe, we're going to hold it from down here at the very base, and then we're going to see how we're going to carve this up. So in terms of taking our knife to this piece, I found this to be the most worrisome part of this process. So what I'm probably going to do is cut it right here. You see that side of the hilt, not the hilt, the hinge right there. So what I'm going to do is start my knife through this side, and then work my way up until it hits that corner right there. And then I'm going to keep the knife inside, flip it around, and checks that way the end of the knife also comes up to right there. So that way we're not cutting too far. We're just going to take our time and do it very slowly. So we're going to do the exact same on this side as well. And then the cut that worried me the most is this one right here. So in an ideal world, you'd probably want it rounded. You could do that if you had the patience, which I do not. So what I'm actually going to do is just cut straight through. So it's kind of like a square, and then it'll come out to the other side and meet that groove. And then the whole thing should come right off. And then what I'm expecting is that we'll have a little bit of excess plastic that's going to prevent it from swiveling. So in order to test that, we're going to put the axle inside here, and don't trim it yet because we're probably going to want to remove it and test it. And then we're going to see if the finger moves. If it moves, great. If it doesn't move, we're going to take the axle back out, and then we're going to remove some excess plastic. And what that plastic would be and where, I'm not sure yet. So we're going to need to find out. So I'm going to do my best staying on camera, which I know I've been absolutely terrible at. And we're going to try cutting this first hinge here. So I'm going to lay it down against the side, and it's pretty soft plastic. So again, take your time. Don't go too fast. Let's see here. I definitely recommend already having some previous knife experience before you go ahead and risk chopping your finger right off. So we're trying to chop off Doc's finger, not our finger, of course. So yeah, so you see right there, I've got my knife right up to the corner there, no further. And now let's see if we can get our knife to poke out of the other side. So we gotta work a little bit. I'll do some time lapses and cuts if this takes a little while, which I'm pretty sure it will. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of plastic right here, so let's try getting in there. And yeah, as we go to the other side, keep it at that groove. Okay, good. Now we're going to come up the groove on that side, and there we go. So now we met it at that corner, and if we test on the other corner as well, we push it down and give it a little bit of rocking action, and I think that is our first hinge done. So very tedious. The rest will probably be a little faster when they're off camera, so let's not worry about that. So I'm going to go ahead and just do the other one on my own time, see if I do it any faster or slower or whatever, and then we'll come back and see if we can cut that part out as well. Okay, so now as you can probably just barely see, I cut out both hinges, and yeah, I pretty much moved just as slow. But when you go to do this yourself, you're not going to have a big honking camera in your way, or in my case, just a little rinky-dink phone on top of a cardboard box. But it can be done. You just need to be very slow, do your best to keep in line with the grooves that are already molded into the figure. And if they're a hair off, which one of them was, I wouldn't be able to show you here, it would be so small, then I wouldn't worry too much, just as long as you have one solid hinge going this way, it shouldn't be too big of a deal. So now what we're going to try and do, again, with this phone in the way, is cut straight through here, so that way it comes through the other side. So I'm going to line up my knife very carefully and kind of just rock it a little bit, again, nice and slow and not with too much pressure. You don't want this to slip out and cut too far into the hinges or yourself, because that's not a happy time. You know what, this is going to be safer on a table, so I'm going to do this off camera, but just trust that eventually you do get through, and what you can do is hold it, like pretend this is a surface of a table, like hold it against, and then kind of just push your knife through until it hits the other side. It's just going to be safer and a little bit easier. Alright, so I managed to pull it off, and as soon as I finished, I realized that I broke a cardinal rule that I suggested at the very start of this video. Ironically enough, I cut the lower hinge before I got to the top hinge. You probably saw some very angry text right down here telling you not to do exactly what I'm doing. But yeah, if you do this, start here, then work your way down. But I obviously did not do that. So as you could see, I removed it, and if we wanted, we could even just glue it right back in if you change your mind. But for me, it worked out fine, and the hole, it's not too easy to see, but it's still there. So what we're going to try and do is take, I think, the little paper clip will be our best bet. We're going to bend it out, and then you see what we got all the ends right here. Bend this one here. So now it's kind of a rod. Now what we're going to do is line this back up and form fit it right back to where it was. Then we're going to dowel the paperclip through and see if it articulates or not. So yeah, it met the hole straight away. And so there we are. Now let's see how and if it moves. It looks kind of okay. So what I think I'm going to want to do is remove a little bit of excess plastic right here. So that's a little bit in the way of stopping this from getting flat. So kind of the goal is to get this angle, at least, to sort of line up with this little stump where all the fingers connect. So I'm going to remove that excess plastic. Then I'm also going to get a thicker paperclip, so it's probably going to be this guy, and slot that through instead. So if we're going to be removing plastic, it's going to get a little looser, as I mentioned. So in order to compensate for that, we'll need a thicker axle, so that way it'll stay in kind of via friction, and we'll see what we can do from there. So I'm going to give that a shot. One moment. Alright, so I went ahead and removed that finger again, and we got our old wire cutters right here. I guess you could cut this with whatever you like, but I just feel more comfortable with these. And, of course, when we're removing this plastic, we want to be very careful not to hit the hole. We want to stay away from it. So I am going to plant this wire cutter barely on that corner, and just snip so it's a little bit rounded, as you can see right there. I guess you could also sand it, but I'm okay with just clipping it a little slot at a time. And as you're doing this, check the other side to be sure you're not getting too close to the hole. I think we're okay. And we could also get rid of this corner too, but let's put the axle back in and see if that's at all necessary. Okay, there we go. I apologize in advance for all the very audible plumbing noises I will be getting throughout this video. It's a weekend and you're going to get that. But yeah, it looks like it moves a lot better. So it moves that far back, which is far back as I want it to go. So I'm going to stop cutting on that side. As for going in, perhaps you'd want it to line up again with that cylinder piece right there so it's flat. So I'm going to remove some more plastic on that side as well. So ultimately, we're just going to get that little stub nice and rounded all the way around. Here we are again, and as you can see, this is the side that we already rounded off, so that way the finger can go back, and we're going to do the exact same thing here, so that way it can go forward. So, get our wire cutters again. Once more, stay away from the hole, because if you destroy the hole, you pretty much lose the joint. So, again, this is a very risky process, and one that you should definitely take your time with. And there we go. Look at that. We're improving this figure already. So it moves really good. I feel like it could be a little bit tighter, so I'm going to go ahead and try getting this bigger one and see if that makes any of a difference. So that way it's not too flicky and it requires actually a little bit more strength. Yeah, I think I made the right call. So now it's a little bit stronger. Not by a whole ton, not by a huge margin, but it works. I mean, it goes in and out, no problem. I just feel like this will be a little bit more secure in the long run. So I think I will go about clipping this. So we're going to go ahead and I'll just use the end of my X-Acto knife to kind of push this aside so it's nice and flush right there. So let's be sure it's lined up with that joint. So right in that spot. Yeah, so it's nice and flat. Now we're going to get our wire cutters again. You'll be seeing these a lot throughout this video, and we're just going to clip. Whoa, where did it go? It flew to the other side of the room, so watch out for that. But now we got the axle right in there for all time, and to be sure of that, we're going to give it a little bit of glue. So 1 second here. Okay, so now I have, as we saw before, my caliber super glue here in gel form, and just really any super glue that's a gel should be enough. And just to be sure I have a little bit more control over how the glue moves around, we're going to get a toothpick here and just get a little dab of it on there. Literally just that. We don't want to do it too much. And what we're going to do is glue each side of the axle, which is very, very easy. Might not even be all that necessary. It's kind of just a security blanket. So we got a little bit there, a little bit on that side. Don't worry about it freezing up the joint or anything like that, because again, the glue is just on the surface to keep the axle in place with the finger, so it's kind of like one piece. But the place where you still have movement that's not impeded by the glue is right in here, which is what we care about. So the main part of the glue is to keep everything in one piece so the axle doesn't slide out, which probably wouldn't happen too much, but if you're handling this figure a lot, then that could happen. You could lose the axle or lose a finger on this guy, and that wouldn't be too fun. So we're just going to keep spreading the glue around so it's not too concentrated anywhere. Just keep it on the surface. Don't get it into the grooves right there or anything. And I am not going to articulate that for a minute or two. This glue is pretty damn quick. You probably don't even need 1 minute, like 30 seconds, it should be fine. But yeah, it should be, I trust it's going to be a good joint. And you can kind of already see that when we move this finger, this paper clip kind of moves with it a little bit. So again, we're going to be a little careful. But yeah, definitely works, and it's a lot more of a fun figure already. So you can also use your finger to kind of brush away any of the extra that's going on. So now, if you're wondering what happens if a hinge were to break or something like that, I honestly wouldn't know what to tell you. This one came out a little bit flimsy, and that's because I was doing it on camera. I'm hoping that the rest will be a little bit more clean. And speaking of the rest, I'm going to do all the other ones off camera. I mean, they're all going to be the same down here. And up here, it's pretty much the same gambit. So I'm going to do those, and I will get back to you once I have this one done. And we'll see how that one turned out. And if that one also looks good, then I'll come back when we have all of them done. Hopefully, we can get these claws doing whatever the heck we want. So stay tuned. Be right back. Yeah, so I almost botched this one, and this is because I did make a few mistakes, being that this was my first one. I should have started back here so that, sorry, other way around. Clearly I've learned nothing. I should have started up here so that way I'd have more grip down here to work with as I'm carving this up. As a result, I kind of went a little too deep with the knife. And also, I didn't give it a very clean cut before I pulled the thing off, so as I was pulling it away, it was kind of pulling some plastic with it, and I almost lost that hole. So what I'm going to need to do is get a little bit of glue, kind of fill in that gap right there, and then that should help to make it whole again. So I'm going to give that a shot. I'm going to try making that finger again, and hopefully I didn't totally mess it up. Okay, so even though you can pretty much definitely not see it, I did put a little bit of glue in there, so I'm going to let that dry for a little while. And in the meantime, we've got our little finger piece right here, which actually came out really good. You can definitely see it's a little bit scrappy on the inside, so while that glue dries, I'm going to clean up that joint right there. And I'm going to put it on, put in the paper clip, and hopefully everything will stay in one piece. Okay, so I managed to get the axle in there no problem, and because that other paperclip I was using before flew away and is yet to show itself, I had to go ahead and get myself some more. So what we're going to do to prevent that from happening again is we're going to try and cut this without having it launch into outer space and become part of NASA. So I'm going to hold onto the paperclip while holding onto the claw with these fingers right here, and as you can see, we've already flattened it out, so it's nice and flush with the joint right there. So again, keep some fingers there, keep some fingers down here on another finger, get your wire cutter nice and flat, and boop. Okay, there we go. So now we can go ahead and test the joint, and I probably should have tested it before I did that, but again, I didn't have a lot of cards to work with because I already kind of broke the hole. So we're going to push it a little, and yeah, you know what? It comes out straight, which is as far as I want it to go. We don't need to go backwards. That wouldn't be too accurate, but it comes down pretty much as far as I'd want it to. I'm thinking as far as I'd want these to go is that far. So the tips of the fingers are barely touching and kind of latching onto something. I need to get more movement down there with that joint there. And yeah, so that works. That's as far as I need it to go. Any further, then I'd probably risk just breaking the joint out of just sheer pressure with my fingers. So yeah, we have a perfectly functioning finger here from what I can tell. So it looks like most of the movement's going to come from here, but then again, I was doing this on camera. With this camera out of the way, everything else should be a little bit more clean. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is just do all the fingers straight up with all the steps that we did, but I'm going to go ahead and take this moment to reorder the steps that we did them in. So, number one, take your drill and drill the holes every axle, because you definitely need to do that so you can ensure that when you put the axle through the hole, then it's a straight shot. It's not going to get off center or anything. And then, when you get your knife, you want to start with the top joint. So start there, so that way you have good grip, and then go ahead and do the lower joint. Then you're going to put a dowel through and test it to be sure if it moves or not. If it's still a little stiff, take the axle back out, and then get rid of some excess plastic, either with your wire cutters, or with a knife, or whatever you think is safest. Just be sure you don't cut too close to that hole that's on the inside there. And then you can put this back on, put back on the axle, see how it moves, rinse and repeat. And then once you feel like it's moving fine, put back in the axle, snip it, and then add glue on either side so that way it doesn't slip out. And then you should be okay. And do that in the exact same process down here. And then eventually you'll have a fully articulated Doc Ock. And then you can do paint after that and whatever you like. So I'm actually going to go ahead and do those while watching Spider-Man myself. So I'm going to have a little bit of fun here, and I will get back to you when this is all done. Okay, so it's several hours later, and as you can see, I finished all the claws, to varying results. So, that's okay. We're gonna figure out a way around this. But anyways, let's first look at the ones that turned out very good. So, this is probably the best one I did. Basically, the third and fourth came out better than the first and second, as I sort of found more nuances within them to sort of up the chances that I wouldn't destroy them. But you can see everything is pretty much articulated now. It can go out totally flat like that, and you can also get them in so they can sort of pinch together, maybe not all the way, but push in those first joints, I guess, of limbs, whatever you want to call them. Push in the second, and yeah, they pretty much come together to a nice pinch right there, and they're nice and tight. It's not too bad, so that's pretty much what an awk punch would look like, so that's really cool. Same pretty much goes for that one, so these two are okay, and these are the earlier ones I did. So that's the first one I did, and that's the second one, and unfortunately, as you could see here, there were a few hinges that I messed up, so that's kind of what I warned about before. I cut a little bit too close, and I guess the best way to avoid that, like, let's say, well, we can use this one over here as example, right? So this one came out fine, right? So what I learned to do over time, if the camera will catch it, is, of course, that cut right there, the long one, not the one on the hinges, but the one that goes across to meet them both, you need to turn your knife a little bit up so it aims away from the hole. I was doing it straight down, and that increases the chances of you hitting the hole directly or maybe just going right on top of it, and it's better to avoid that by cutting a little bit upwards. My problem was that I was taking my knife and I was basically going straight through, right? So what I learned to do is sort of do it at an angle like this, so it would go over the hole a little bit. And then the same goes for down there, and then that's why these two, 3 and 4, came out a little bit better. So these claws are fine. They should go on to Doc Ock no problem. So my next challenge, I'll figure that out in a little while, is how exactly am I going to solve this problem that we have here. So first of all, I got 2 articulated ones, which is the good news, and they're in one piece. So those are going to be the ones I have on the claws on the front. As for these, I'm going to see if I can find a fail-safe solution to fixing those hinges, and if I can't do that, I might just glue those broken joints together so they're static, and those could just be the claws in the back, which are always going to be down, they're always going to be crawling, they're not always going to be grabbing, so that's just going to be a thing for me where there's going to be 2 claws that are very articulated, then 2 that are frozen in place, but in a position that works. So I'm going to think about that, and I'll get back to you when I have some semblance of an idea. Okay, so I think I found a solution. First of all, here's Doc Ock, and I put on the 2 successful hands, and they look very good. So as you can see, we've got them in kind of their punching position. I can hold him up a little bit. I almost like the idea of having his arms sort of synced to the tentacles in the back, so like wherever he moves, the tentacles move. So that's kind of a way that I like to display him. But anyways, going back down here, I think I know what to do now. So I have a whole bunch of wire that I haven't used much, but it seems pretty sturdy. So what I think I'm going to do as my failsafe, and a failsafe I'd recommend to you, assuming this works, is what I'll do is, of course, for example, we have this little finger here, and that already has the paperclip in there, and obviously that failed. So what I'll do is I'm going to use some tweezers to kind of squeeze them out, and they should just click right out with a glue. I could slot them away. Then what I can do from there is, it won't be the most beautiful thing, it won't be a joint anymore, but I could get a drill and then do a little hole right in there, and then do the exact same thing here on the end of the finger, going down past the 2 hinges that we got on the side, and then in between, we're going to put that wire. So that way it will simulate the movement, but it will allow us to substitute the actual tangible joint that we were able to accomplish there. So that shouldn't be a problem. I'm personally okay with that. I'm going to put these 2 botched hands, I guess, in the back so they won't be as noticeable. And then these 2 up here are going to be my main ones. So I'm okay with kind of making that little negotiation there. Another option I was potentially considering, although I don't think I'll do it, is you'll notice here that I have 2 fingers that were fine on this one, and then one that was fine on this one. So if you don't want to do the wire method, and you don't mind having a claw or two that's static, you could take your best fingers and then create one superior claw. So for example, you notice here that there's almost this triangle kind of shape that branches off of the cylinder. So what you can do is you could take a finger from a botched hand, being this one, and then you see that triangle again right there. You can cut that off, so that way it would be separated and the finger would be intact along with the joints. And you'd take off this triangle as well, and then you could swap them with some glue. And then you'd have one fully articulated one. Then with the pieces that you've got remaining, you could probably just glue them all together to make one that's a static piece if you like. Or maybe you could add a flamethrower in the center, give it some blast effects, so you can have more of a creative hand. But in my case, I think I'd prefer to go the consistent route, so I'm going to have those two remain the same. I mean, aside from paint and all that. Structure-wise, I'm going to leave them. And over here, we're going to do some Dremel work and see if that wiring does the job. So I'm not going to do that on camera because I've shown off the Dremel a few times and you pretty much understand the gambit. Don't go too deep. Go in nice and center. It should be fine. Then we just need to insert the wire, clip it, and put the other finger in. And then hopefully it should look somewhat okay, but very worst case, it's going to move. So it's guaranteed to work. So let's see how this turns out. I'm curious too. Guys, I actually pulled it off, so let's check this out. So I did the wire method, and the best part about it is you can't even tell what joint has wire and what joint is intact from a distance. So visually, it doesn't change a damn thing, which is absolutely great. Is the camera at the right angle? It's at the right angle. Anyways, but let me see if I can try and demonstrate what I did. So that joint was fine. That joint was all right. I think it was this one right here. Yes. So I'm sorry I couldn't show the full process on camera, but basically what I did is I drilled up here and I drilled down into here, as I said. And then I also drilled a little bit down on that hitch, as you can see right there. There's a little crevice. So that way when it bends, then the wire will have some place to go. So it looks like it's a hinge. It's, I guess a simulated hinge, you can call it, but it's a wire. But when you're looking at it from the outside, you can't even tell. It looks like it's all one piece. So it works really good. So basically what you need to do, once you have those two holes, is insert a wire, glue it up there, and then take the other excess wire from the other side, plug it through the other hole, and then also glue it back into there as well. Now, one thing you want to keep in mind is when you drill into the cylinder, you're going to get into this ball socket. So be sure that when you glue those wires together, that the wire is not poking through that socket, or otherwise it's going to interfere with the ball articulation. So I'm going to see if I can put this all together and see if Ock will have all his claws. And here we are with a fully articulated Doc Ock, which, well, more or less, but as you can see, everything now moves the way that I've wanted it to, so you get all the digits out there, and yeah, everything looks pretty good. I mean, that's one of the wired ones. I might need to glue that one in a little more securely, but that's okay. If they pop out, I'll glue it back in, and then it should look just fine. So yeah, and also another thing you can do is, as long as you're careful, like we'll bring in our arm right here, we'll bend it right up. If you want to remove one of the claws and switch out the other ones, maybe you have one that you feel like lines up a little bit better, is more consistent. Oh my, okay. Sorry about that, my camera just fell to its death. I really can't wait for that tripod, but I'll demonstrate this quick before my camera falls again, because it will. But what you'd want to do is, if you want to switch out the claws, you can do that, but just be sure, because I glued it right here, you want to kind of hold it down and then sort of tilt the claw away to pop it out if you want to remove them, just to be sure that the ball peg doesn't break off. It did on one of mine, but I glued it right back and it was fine. So I don't feel the need to switch out the claws today, or I'm not sure if I ever will, but if I do, then that is an option that I have based on how I chose to build him. So all that being said, I mean, yeah, there will be physical maintenance that'll need to happen with the claws potentially here and there. I mean, it's a custom. All customs sometimes require a second pass, but Structurally, I really like where he is. I think he's just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and try doing monochrome on the claws and see how that looks. So I know before I said I wasn't going to do it, but at this point I'm realizing, the tentacles are so pretty. Why would I want to get rid of that? So I'm just going to demonstrate this very quickly. So here we have a Molotow pen, as you can see here. And for those of you who don't know what this is, it's a very, very sensitive liquid, I suppose. And what it is meant to do, give it a little shake as we talk, is give a nice smooth surface a chrome sheen. So I'm going to give it a shot. Like, a really difficult thing about working with this stuff, because it's always difficult, is whenever you chrome a surface, you don't want to touch that surface for a good 7 days, preferably. So what I need to do is I'm going to try thinking of a way to apply the chrome so that way I'm working from the fingers down to the base. Because if I did from the base and up to the fingers, I probably want the base to hold on for stability so that way I could get to the fingers a little easier, so you're not flopping around or anything. So I'm going to start with the fingertips, work my way around, keep going down until we get to the cylinder. And, of course, don't forget, on the back, we have those teal ports where the arms actually enter into Ock's body. So, at least before we do that, we're going to take this claw. I'm just going to show you what this monochrome can do. It's sometimes with varied results. Sometimes, some days the pen will want to work, other days it will not. But you see right there, we got that blue surface. We're going to try, and you kind of just use it like a paintbrush or a marker. Just dash it around. Sometimes you need to warm it up a little bit. Just give it some time. Yeah, can you see that on camera? See, it's getting a little bit shinier. So we're going to keep trying that. If this takes too long, then I'll just edit it so it's a little shorter. And that's what customizing is. It's taking a figure and not only improving it, but doing something to it that allows it to tell more of a story. Where it's been, what it's doing, what it's trying to destroy, or even what it's building. In this case, Doc Ock, he can build a machine so he can hold the power of the sun in the palm of his hands, right? It didn't come out too great this time around, but you can see it's kind of giving it a reflectiveness. This is coming out total crap, but just take my word for that. I'm going to attempt to chrome them up, and then when they're done drying in several days, I'll show you the end result. So just take my word for it for now. I mean, what? You're going to see... For me, it's going to be days. For you, it's going to be in a matter of seconds. Like, check this out. 1, 2, 3, and about a week later, I changed my mind. I decided to just go with standard acrylic paint because the Molotow pens were not working with me. So I just went with some standard silver paint and went over them with 2 layers over the course of a few days. I just applied the last layer, and they work pretty good. They're not as chrome as the rest of the tentacles are, but I'm okay with that. So the reason why I put Doc Ock in a body bag is I'm going to bring him outside and spray the claws so that way the paint doesn't peel off or flake off or anything. Just give it a nice coat. I've got over here the Testor's Splay Lacquer Dull Coat. Glossy would probably be better, but I'm just going to work with what I have, and I kind of don't mind the idea of having the claws be a different sheen and silver than the limbs. It almost looks like it's made of different components, so I'm actually okay with that. But naturally, if you'd want them to be consistent, then either be more patient with Molotow pens, which I'm definitely not, or spray paint them with chrome, or spray them with silver, then spray them with gloss. That's also an alternative. There's a lot of ways to go about it, but for me, I just hit them with silver paint manually, like I brushed it on, and then I'm going to spray them with some dull coat, and we'll just see where it goes. Okay, so here we are after the spraying process, and now we're on a weekend at daytime. I know, what? So here we have one of the claws, and it came out pretty nice. I wish it was a little bit shinier. I do not have a gloss coat at the moment, but perhaps at some point, if I ever get it again, then I'll just run through these claws again and spray them back up. I'll cycle through all 4 claws, and you can have a good look at them and what they can do. So this one is more splayed out, as you can see. This one, well, you can kind of get it in its default position, so you can kind of get it back to where it was before we got the articulation in there. And then over here, if you want, you can kind of get it clenched up. So It's almost like he's holding his glasses or Spider-Man's arm, if you like. And then we got another splayed out one over here. And as you can see, everything is very well articulated. Sorry, let me bend that down a bit. But every joint does its job very well. One thing I would recommend is before you go about painting, just go ahead and check each joint to be sure there's no excess plastic you need to trim off with an X-Acto knife. There's no loose joints, there's nothing that needs to be fixed. If you wired any of them, to be sure that the wire is nice and sturdy. And of course, if any of the joints break off, then be sure to assess to that. But then once everything looks stable, then you can be pretty comfortable about doing the paint whatever way you like. So technically, we're done, but there's one more thing I'd like to do. I haven't yet mentioned the blue dot in the middle of each claw, and I'm seeing a lot of potential there. So if you watched my custom Jawa showcase from a few days back, I used what was called SpaceBeams glow-in-the-dark paint, which is really cool and fun to use. So I have 3 vials here. I think these are the only 3 colors that they make. I'll put the link in the description again if anyone would like to try their hand at it. They're not, the bottles aren't labeled anymore for whatever reason. I think I took them off, but I'm pretty sure this one's green, this one is sort of a blue, and this one looks pink, but when it glows, it's more of a yellow, kind of like like Jawa's eyes. Obviously, this is the paint I use for that. So what I'm going to do is use the blue paint, which I believe is this one, and I'm going to apply it in the center of each claw. So I'm going to do a quick little tutorial on how to use these paints right here. So one thing that I went ahead and did is I have trouble actually discerning which paint is which color. I'll probably just write the name on them after I do this little video here. But in order to test them out, and just so you can get an idea of how great this paint is, I've got this little torch that we were playing around with before. I'm going to shine them in each cap for no longer than like 5 seconds. You see that green already, and over here. Let's give a little bit more. There's a little bit of sun behind me, so it doesn't show up as nicely, but yeah, you can kind of make out that blue, and that is going to look absolutely gorgeous if we put that on the claw. At least that's what I'm hoping. So when it comes to applying this SpaceBeams glow-in-the-dark paint, there is kind of a rhyme or reason to it. You can't just slap it on like any old acrylic. You kind of need to baby it a bit as you apply it. So here I've got a good brush, pretty soft, not too hard or anything. I got it in some water. Do that again. I actually just recently acquired some paper cups, which I should have had years ago, but now I've got them. And then just brush it, clean it up with a napkin here so it's not too wet. So now we're going to go ahead and apply this teal paint. I don't know why you call it teal. It's more just straight blue. We're going to apply it to the center of the claw here. So I just take it right from the cap. I don't know why it's up there. Maybe I should store these a little bit better. But one thing that I said in the Jawa video is when it comes to this kind of paint, it has a very specific almost a glue consistency to it, like Elmer's glue. So you can't just merely stroke it on like I did here with the metal arms here. You kind of need to just dab it on. Be sure you get a nice layer going on. Okay, good. The camera's picking that up. And kind of drop it on there as if it was like a raindrop that just splotched onto it. So we got a little bit on there, and we're going to keep applying it until it's nice and even. Actually, it's kind of good to oversaturate the brush just a little bit, and then hopefully we can fill in that circle a little bit. You see, that's why I said it's not very good for big surfaces. It's better for accent work. It kind of spreads out. They need to fill in the gaps. So got a little bit there. When it dries up, hopefully it won't be so flush with that circle. That will fill in the bubble a little bit better. Oh boy, I'm getting flashbacks from those standardized tests from high school. I don't like that. And it's getting there. Take your time. There's really no rush at this. And just kind of flatten it out, almost like a pancake, sort of. And that should work. I'm hoping that when it dries, again, it'll kind of shape over that circle that's underneath it a little bit more. But basically, we're going to let that dry, and I may or may not add a second coat, but I think one should be enough. But while we're here, let's go ahead and take our torch again. There we go. I always forget which is the white end and which is the red. And we're going to shine it on the inside over here. I'll push it back. The camera's being a little bit finicky. Glow it in. the more layers of this paint you have, the better it'll glow, of course. And let's see. Yeah, that's not so bad. Let's get my other hand over here. Yeah, look at that. That's really nice. I think that some of these paints are also blacklight sensitive too, so you don't have to feel like you need to focus a light or the sun on them all the time if you'd like to get them glowing. There's other ways to go about it, but yeah, I'm going to go around to all 4 claws and do the exact same process. Oh, you see there's that little edge there. Let's go ahead and flatten that out. Yeah. You can also get a toothpick, and that can sort of help to move it around so it gets in shape. So I'm going to go around to the other claws, do the same process, perhaps add a second layer. I'll let you know in the next clip if I chose to do that or not. It's not rocket science. I mean, it's a second layer. You just put another one on there, so you don't really need to see that. But yeah, let's just see how this turns out. Just a little creative choice on my part, and hopefully it looks good. Oh, and the last thing I wanted to mention is, again, with the consistency of this paint, it is very glue-like, so be sure that whenever you're done using it, that you get some water and really rub it out of there, just because it will make the bristles quite sticky, and it might make your brush, well, no longer a brush, it'll kind of get a little bit frozen, and we don't want that. So yeah, just treat this as if it were Elmer's glue, and that should give you kind of a good metaphor on how it should be treated when you're applying it to any figure. And here is Dr. Octavius all done and looking absolutely awesome. So let's do a few different posing options. And firstly, we have him standing on all 4 arms. And as you can see, he looks absolutely awesome. We've done this pose before, but the difference now is we have all claws, all 4, planted firmly on the ground, as it should be in the comic and the movies. So that looks really excellent. The one thing that I forgot to do, and I might do it later, is I didn't paint the ports on the back silver. They're still kind of that blue, but honestly, they're on the back, and I can't really be bothered to do it, so I'll get around to it when I get around to it. But yeah, you could definitely get this big old Otto Octavius up on all 4 arms, no problem, and he looks really cool. And here he is again in an absolutely bonkers pose with my head swap Spider-Man. You could see him getting all tangled up, and you pretty much get a showing of every single thing that this Otto Octavius is able to do in a single shot. So you have him grabbing Spider-Man's head and his leg, and also wrapping around his entire body. And then up here, we have the glow-in-the-dark arm, which looks really nice. I just supercharged that with my torch right here. But yeah, all you have to do is bring it back there, and then it'll be glowing once again. They all do that. Like, even if I bring it over to this one, and that one should be glowing too. And it's a little bit more in the light, but you could take my word for that. I won't lie to you. But yeah, I am very, very happy with how this mod turned out. It was a very risky and intimidating process, but if you can pull it off, it looks pretty damn cool, and it would definitely steal the show on your shelf. So if anyone else wants to go ahead and try doing these mods, whether they just want to do the tentacles and nothing more, or if they want to go as far as articulating the fingers, let me know how it went for you. Go in the comments and let me know if you found any alternate solutions to getting those joints to move, or maybe any other fail-safes. Like for me, I broke a few joints that I had to use wire instead. So if you have any other ideas for substitutes of resources and materials that could be used, then be sure to let us know, and then we can improve this formula more and more with each person who does it. But this was a lot of fun, and I hope you guys liked watching the process. That pretty much concludes this 2-part series within the Customizer's Journal. I hope you don't mind that they're too long, but again, it's really just about the process, problem solving, failing a lot considerably, but at the end of the day, we got a really cool Dr. Octopus going on, and I love him a lot, and I hope you do too. So thank you guys very much for watching. If you like what's been coming out, then please be sure to
like,
comment,
and subscribe.
Or leave a bad review for your favorite comic book movie on Rotten Tomatoes.
Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope I will see you all later. Here, let's try and get the camera to focus. Come on. Focus. Do it. Focus. Concentrate. Alright, that's not gonna work. See how the Claude is modded. I don't feel the need to switch to English is failing me today.